presentation was actually put together for schools. The reason we put this presentation together was because I've been looking at Smog for quite a while. It was something that I didn't. It wasn't by virtue of exposure, because it just so happens that I'm also married to Raphael and he's an environmentalist. Lekin, it was a matter of vested interest for me. My daughter, who goes to school, was being exposed to an excessive amount.
Please use the mic.
I'll just manage over here. That's okay. Can I leave this? Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, so I arrived at the issue of smog because of my daughter, because she was, I think, 8, 9 years old when it first started out, and obviously it was a concern as a mother. Most of your activism groups in the world tend to be, when it comes to air pollution, tend to be led by mothers, because it comes from a place of concern for the children that you are supposed to look after, and they being the most vulnerable members of society. So it's very clear to me that it was necessary for me to get involved for the sake of my for the sake of my daughter. Now this is kind of something that should be an indication of where your position lies in this as well. My vested interest was my daughter. Other people have different reasons for coming to join the fight against smog or climate change or air pollution. But the point is that everybody has found a space for themselves and everybody is working to fix this situation. जब लोग government का नाम लेते हैं and कहते हैं कि government इसको handle कर रहे हैं, I get very upset because the government is not going to handle anything. The government is only going to handle anything if you have done your reading and you have figured out कि कौन सा department is responsible for what, उस मिनिस्टर का नाम क्या है, उस सेक्रेटरी का नाम क्या है, उसके किस ऑफिशियल को मैं वहाँ पर पकड़ सकता हूँ जिससे मैं कह सकता हूँ कि इस इशू पर आप काम क्यों नहीं कर रहे हैं. So in that respect, as a mother and with another collection of mothers, we went to see the Minister of Education at the Department of Education in the Punjab. And one of the things we discussed was that something should be done with the schools in order to protect our children. They should be closed down when you have extreme smog events. There should be a pabandi on the number of breaks the kids take, and they shouldn't have that degree of exposure because they are the most vulnerable. So we took these matters to the minister, and the minister agreed to put these actions into place. Whether or not those schools have actually put them into place has been something that us mothers have had to enforce on that end as well. So not only did we go to the government to say कि आप इसको हमें permission दे इस पर action लेने के लिए, we've also policed the situation as well. Now as citizens, that is really taking up a responsibility not normally fall to you if your government is working. But we're doing it because we understand, as do you and as does everybody else, that the government machinery will not work unless we hold them to account. And that is why this presentation came up, because when we had that meeting, we were told by the ministry that we need to go and do awareness as well. Because one of the biggest problems we were going to face was that we were going to have students and parents and teachers who are not willing to do the right thing because unke paas awareness nahi hai. And that is true. So this particular presentation came out of that, so that we could understand the gravity of the situation. So we called it the toxic air crisis, a health emergency in Lahore. We went through all of the basics that you would need to understand in order to protect yourself, to understand the gravity of the situation, and to take appropriate steps. Can we have the next slide? Okay, so now this was taken from a presentation that Davar Butt usually gives, but he's not here today, and he would give us a basic rundown of what the makeup of the air was. So predominantly you have, in terms of the pollutants, you have you have oxides of nitrogen, sulfur dioxide, ozone, PM 2.5 and PM 10. PM 2.5 is the one that you hear about, and that's the one that affects your cognitive abilities, will lead to can lead to heart failure, can lead to stroke, and can lead to developmental problems. Can you move forward?
Yes.
This is just an illustration of PM 2.5. I'm sure आप लोगों ने देखा है. It's 2.5 microns in diameter, and it's about I think 1/12 the size, 1/20th the width of a human hair. So that'll give you the sense of how small it is. Can we have the next slide? We have two particular videos to show you exactly what the effects of smog are on children and on adults. Now, there is this misconception that children are particularly affected. Yes, they are, but healthy adults are also affected, and in ways that can be fatal as well. So we have videos to prove both of them. Do you have time to go through them, or should we just leave them? Yeah, we're just going to skip them because I think you have some awareness. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so the estimated death burden with smog is 135 Pakistanis per year, and this is from the Lancet Medical Journal. So we already know, and it's been mentioned several times, that you will lose 5 years of your life if nothing is done. You will gain those 5 years if some immediate effort to curb pollution actually actually undertaken. The worst affected areas are Lahore, Gujranwala, Faisalabad, Multan, and Sargodha. Can we have the next slide? Okay, so there was a sector-wise apportionment of the pollution. Now, the reason for doing this is that as an activist, there's nothing you can do if you do not know what the pollution is made up of. You can suggest it's crop burning, you can suggest it's industry, you can do all of that, but if you don't have the actual data, then you're barking up the wrong tree. So it's very, very, very important that you know who's responsible and that you target your activism in that direction. So for Lahore, the biggest sector is transport, one that we've paid particular attention to, and that we also paid attention to when we went to schools, because our recommendation for them was to shift the traffic of cars going and picking and dropping schools to school buses. So there was an understanding on our part that wo transport ka jo emissions hai, unko, we have to bring them into control. Next slide. This is the Air Visual app, which is, aap log istemal karte hain? Has anybody here seen an Air Visual app? Achha, how many people here have a smartphone? All right, so you should have all downloaded this by now. If you haven't downloaded this, then I've come to realize that I'm speaking to an ignorant crowd. You should actually get on your phone, download Air Visual as an app, and you should know what the air quality is at the drop of a hat. If you do not have this, you are missing a very basic foundational point. And you are not going to be in a position to do any activism, speak on the matter, if you do not have access to the data. So you get on your phones, download Air Visual, okay? Once you've downloaded Air Visual, you will be able to understand how to read Air Visual. They have an index, which you should be to some degree familiar with. By and large, when people talk about air pollution on social media, they will tend to use this index. So 0 to 5 is good. Those are when the air quality is decent. 51 to 100 is moderate. 101 to 150 is unhealthy for sensitive groups. 150 to 200 unhealthy. 201 to 300 very unhealthy. 301 to 500 is hazardous. Most of December has been hazardous. Matlab ke life-threatening. So, and this is several years in a row, December has been hazardous, and it doesn't look like it's going to change unless there's going to be some awareness on your part as young graduates coming out in the legal field, and some effort in terms of activism on your part as well. Next slide, please. This is how bad it is. You are today smoking 28.9 cigarettes that you have not consciously made the decision to smoke. Actually, these particular numbers don't even relate to a day as polluted as today. You're probably smoking more than 30. And forget about that. You're young guys, you probably don't care much for your health. Your little brothers and sisters, your children, the elderly are smoking this. And this is not a very choice of their own. This is what a lung looks like for somebody in their late teens in Delhi. When they're exposed to this level of pollution. This is what it looks like when you are not living in Delhi. So we can make that comparison very easily between what our lungs look like in Lahore, and they're probably not dissimilar to what that lung looks like in Delhi as well. So the situation is dire, and it's one that requires immediate action to be made by every single person, and not necessarily in your everyday life and leaving your cars behind and stuff like that, but in the sense that you can actually make some noise, speak to somebody in a place of influence, get in contact with somebody of the appropriate department, file a case, become an environmental lawyer, do some activism. There's a lot more that you guys can do as law graduates. Can we have the next slide? Okay, so this is just an understanding of how bad it was in December in 2018, and it's unlikely to be different in 2019. We had, on average, in the month of December, Lahore had 336 as the average air quality for the entire month. That's hazardous, period. And we weren't even on the top. Gujranwala was at the top, at close to 400. Next slide. This is basically what it looks like all year long. From October to December, you see a sudden peak in emissions. It continues all the way through to April. It could very well be because of the condensation of the air, because of the reduction in the temperature, and it could also equally be the increase in traffic as a result of school trips that begin around the same period of time. Again, you need more data on this to be able to see where this comes from or whether it's just got to do with the weather patterns. Next slide. This is it's 2018. We had 0 good days in Lahore. We didn't have a day off for our lungs. Our lungs were basically in a horrible, polluted space for the entire year. 20 moderate days. That's not good, that's moderate. And that's only 20. We had 64 sensitive days where basically anybody who with asthma, young children, the elderly with any heart conditions, for them it was difficult to breathe this air. Still not good for us. Unhealthy, we had 187 days. So the majority of our year was from unhealthy to hazardous. That's basically what our children, we and our parents have been having to endure for 2018 and probably no different for 2019. Next slide. All right, again, because this was targeted towards children, them being the most vulnerable, this is the section that we concentrated on. Children are at greater risk because they tend to be more physically active, they take in a greater amount of air pollution as they breathe twice as much. Their organs are still developing and they are more likely to have asthma or acute respiratory illness, which can be aggravated when pollution levels are high. If you have family members, I would put money down on it that of the young children in your families, a few of them definitely have asthma. Because this is a situation that is now normal for them, that quite a large majority of kids now have acute respiratory problems, which include asthma. This is not normal. Next. Okay, one of the problems that we were encountering was people seem to think that if you breathe more air pollution, you will become immune to air pollution. I've never heard anything more ignorant in my life, but people do tend to say it to me. People who allegedly have education. Bacteria is something, just say exposure, okay, you will have immunity. Not smoking. You don't go and start smoking because your lungs are going to develop immunity to smoking. Okay, that is what air pollution is. So if you ever hear anybody say that, please, unko dant ke kaho, okay, please don't say this in front of anybody else because it's the height of ignorance. Next slide. Can we have the next slide? This is what you can do. Next slide. Again, this was designed for children. So the emphasis is on school buses. Now, obviously for you, if you have to look at how you're coming into your college on a daily basis. On an individual level, yes, you have to find ways of reducing your emissions as in terms of the transport sector. And this is specifically for smog right now, but it will impact climate change in general. Now, before anybody says, what about something or the other? Let me tell you one thing. If you are tuned on to one thing, whether it be smog, whether it be water, whether it be pollution in your rivers, you will automatically start to care about everything else. The environment, the air you breathe, climate change, it is a holistic calling. You will invariably start showing an interest in soil quality, in air pollution, in the rivers, in plastic consumption. So this isn't a space for what about. It is very much a case of if you are interested in smog, you are very likely going to take up all of these other issues as causes when the time is right. Okay, so we did emphasize buses because it is something that the Pajad Clear Action Plan has emphasized as one of their policies. It's not something that we just pulled out of the air. This is a lot of stuff that is studied, that is the data has been derived on, and we are able to make these conclusions because there has been work on it. These are not things that people have just pulled out of thin air, and that's why data is important. And that's why if you can, this is something that is worth dedicating your life to, collecting data, presenting data, being able to raise awareness through data. And that's one of the key features of Davar's talks, who sadly is not here today, is that he has the ability to analyze the data and make a very compelling argument. Next slide. This is what you can do at home, air purifiers. Does anybody here have an air purifier? Yeah. It is unfortunately, it's a new thing that people are required to now install in order to basically give their lungs some rest, but it will become as essential to you as a bunker because it uses as much energy as a fan. In fact, I think the air purifier we have is 30 watts for being able to use it. So these will become normal things in your household with the air quality the way they are. If you're not installing these, you will become sick. And you will not be able to function. You will have headaches, you will find that you are unable to concentrate, and there will be constant issues in terms of breathing, your eyes will hurt, your eyes will water, all of this is going to happen. And after a while, you think you can handle it, but then when you realize you can't function, you're going to end up installing something like this. So it is something that is becoming easier to come by. It is becoming cheaper. There are some local varieties available like the Indoor Forest, which comes to about 16,000 for one. But it is something you're going to have to install. And if you don't like installing it, good, because that means you'll want to do something about changing the situation. Next slide. Masks are necessary. Nobody here is wearing a mask. I'm wearing a mask. I find it necessary to wear a mask simply because I will not be able to function after a while. I'll get headaches and it's not going to end well. So the best thing to do is to get yourself a mask, wear it whenever you are out, wear it in a situation when you know the PM 2.5 is high. It's been very difficult to get children to start using it, but we've had to get adults to enforce it in order for them to use it. And we do expect people to be acting responsibly and presenting themselves as an example for how you need to be doing the right thing. So now this one really is food for thought. This is what we're living in Lahore right now. That level of pollution is something that we've become quite used to. But I think the story on the right is actually a lot more interesting. This was Beijing in 2015. They were set to have a military parade to mark 70 years of victory over the Japanese in the Second World War. And they wanted a blue sky backdrop for the military parade. So they banned cars for 2 weeks. When they banned the cars, they had that beautiful blue sky. They had the military parade, they lifted the ban. Within 24 hours, that's what their air looked like. Not 3 days, not 4 days, 24 hours. So there is something you can do about it. It's just the question is, are you willing to take that drastic action? And nothing less than this level of drastic action is going to be enough. I think that's it. Yeah. Thank you so much. I think I'm gonna hand over to the next speaker. Okay.